Security Halt Podcast. Simple podcast for dudes, by dudes, but not for by dudes, just especially veterans. Security Halt, you take a knee, face out, sit down for a little bit, and chill out. Listen to us, Cab, Paul, and Greg, say some really stupid shit that'll make you laugh and smile. Security Halt. It's what you doctor ordered, or gynecologist, or perhaps the doctor that looks at your beehole.
There's only one rule. It's mimosas by 11. There's only one rule. Mimosas by 11.
That's the single greatest thing you've ever said. And I would even say it's the brave.
Right, this is probably going to be some horseshit propaganda for China. The news is like, hey, for some reason people think this is horseshit propaganda for China.
Valid point, Paul, but where else are people going to get riveting content and a consistent list of kill, marry, and fuck? I mean, no one's doing it, and someone has to provide it for the people. And that someone is us, Security Halt Podcast. Can you hear me, young one?
Do you have me?
I got you loud and clear.
Sweet.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another fine edition of Security Halt Podcast. In memoriam of Gregory and Paul. Well, they're not dead, but Greg is certainly about to be executed in the state of Texas for showing his goods to a young, unwed Christian mother of 4, and Paul has been indicted on charges of cannibalism in New York. Sadly, wow. Those are patently false. They're just hardworking boys, and they're working this weekend. So sadly, you, good sir, are dealing with me, the one and only Cab. Just me. No one else. The two of us. Sort of like a date.
Ooh, I like it.
Less rape.
Oh.
That topic today, well, many, but I think one of the things I want to start off with is memeing culture. Memes. They're pretty volatile these days. If you're good, you wield their power for great good. If you're evil, you join the side of the dark side and use it to promote the army or to spam people. And today with me is the one and only ADOS Actual. A young up-and-coming... I feel so weird saying that. A like-minded memer in the mill community who's got some hilarious antics that are both cheeky and fun. But nonetheless, you do try to do some good, just like we do. And it's one of the main things we're going to get into today. So, yeah, without further ado, good sir, tell us the tale of you. Introduce yourself to us.
All right, so I'm ADOS. I'm a E6 in the Georgia Guard. Infantry, 11 Bravo since day one. Got a little recruiting stint, hated it. And that's actually kind of sort of how I got into memes, was to start bringing a lot of the stuff from recruiting to light. And I hate Tim Kennedy, so I'm always memeing the crap out of Tim Kennedy. He deserves every ounce of it, to be honest. And I'm really happy to be here. I appreciate you having me.
And we appreciate you. And that's sort of how we initiated our online friendship. As a soft guy, I cannot stand by and condone Tim Kennedy's douchebaggery, and he's done a huge disservice to recruit people for just the military in general. Not to take away from his career, not take away from his civilian accomplishments, but a lot of us feel that the quiet professional name and mentality is something that should be upheld and you should not be taken lightly. I think the last straw for me was the bus incident of, hey, I'm Tim Kennedy, get on the bus, let's get you some freedom.
Yeah, I think that was the last straw for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm thinking that, yeah, it was just such beauty. But I will say this. Do not take it away from this man. This man has been hunting Hitler on live
Yeah.
TV for 2 decades, ladies and gentlemen. God bless his efforts.
Yeah, everything. He does everything for 5'11" tactical for sure.
Goddamn, the best ambassador you could ever hope for.
Yeah,
But
he'll
yeah,
even stop and borrow a weapon from a Marine or soldier on the airfield to stop and take a clout picture, even though he's unarmed.
yeah. You there? Give me your kid and weapon. I must use it for this picture. After
I
that,
need it
you
for
can
the
have
gram.
it. It's weird, man. Yeah, it's a weird place we find ourselves on the interwebs these days. There are people that wield it for good, and those definitely that wield it for evil. But I ultimately think there is a certain power in the use of rallying everybody. There's been several causes, and from what I see, I think, and let me know if you agree. And it goes from everything from rallying to get support for a situation like service members that are missing, to bringing light to the plight of service members on some installations for Hood when things go horribly wrong. But like you were saying, for a recruiter, I got to imagine that that's a powerful tool. And I know there's got to be you guys have to have like a weird sort of like bylaws and regulations for how to go about using it. And was that sort of like what kind of brought it into your world, like your influence, like how you could use it as an influencer?
So I never really used social media a whole lot until I became a recruiter. And
Mhm.
then it was basically, hey, you have to have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. The only thing they didn't want us on was TikTok. Um,
Really?
yeah, they didn't want us on TikTok because there was quite a few cringe videos that were already circulating from other recruiters. So
Yeah.
they were like, no, you don't need to do this. But it's an interesting arena to try to recruit in because obviously you're trying to market to 17 to 22-year-old is the
Yeah.
primary demographic. So you have to stay very, very up on music and current trends, and you have to find a way to make your content relatable to them and make them like want to join. But at the same time, you have to balance on that sword of I can't be stupid or I can't post anything cringe because one, I'm going to get roasted.
Yeah.
Two, it can have adverse effects. It can make people not want to join because there are
Yeah.
people that want to join for that toe the line discipline, and then there's other people that just want to join the army because they think it's a 9 to 5.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I have to say, one of the biggest things I'm glad I never had to do was recruiter duty. I would not be able to perform that job at all. And it's not like a sentiment of like, oh, thank God I don't have to. It's just a true reality sentiment of like, that's a tough fucking mission. Like, you guys, of all the situations you're always hearing about, are the overworked, overstressed, and underappreciated recruiter, and the missions, like the insane, and it's always posted online too. The horrible bosses, the insane quotas you guys have to meet. How, like, I would imagine, was when you were going into that, did you have an understanding that it was going to be like, all right, this is going to be a challenging task? Or were you more of the like, well, let's stay positive and see what this is going to be like?
To be honest, like I 100% didn't know what I was getting myself into.
Yeah.
I had heard, during my interview that it was a demanding job, because it's not like in the guard, it's not like active duty where you just get told, hey, you're going to be a recruiter. Like
Yeah.
you have to drop a packet and all this other stuff. So I was in between jobs at the time, and I was like, why not? I'll go on active duty. That's not scary to me. So I was like, whatever. So I did it. And during my interview, my NCOIC was like, this is a pretty demanding job on the time. And she asked, are you married? And at the time I was. And she was like, okay, well, that's good and bad. And I was like, okay, cool, whatever. But I would say about 2 months into recruiting, I was running around like my hair was on fire. It's truly a 24/7, 365 job.
Yeah.
Like there's no, if you're a successful recruiter, it's a 25/8, 367. because you're always going to have more people calling you. But even like I would consider myself an unsuccessful recruiter. Um, I made my quota like twice out of a year. Um, but I recruited ethically. I didn't want
Yeah.
to.
You weren't
I didn't want
preying
to
on the
lie. I
kids.
didn't.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No. But even then, I was running around with my hair on fire because
Yeah.
if that government phone goes off, you have to answer it. You get really, really good at talking and driving at the same time. You get really good at texting and driving, even though you're not supposed to. You get really good at checking emails and driving because you have to, because there's so many changes that come out in the recruiting world every day. Like something's
Yeah.
getting amended or something's getting added to it, and you have to try to stay on top of it because maybe the rule says they're not taking somebody with blue eyes at noon, but they revoked that rule at 1300, and you're not sending kids with blue eyes, and now you're failing. So it was a very fluid environment where you had to stay on your toes and be attached to your phone and your computer 24/7.
Yeah.
And that was the most stressful thing.
I can just see that now. No Aryans. We're not taking any more Aryans. Get Latinos. 13
Right.
hours later. Only Aryans. Oh. So in that time period, looking at everything that you were doing, once you got established into the recruiter life, were you just like, fuck, let's just run the clock out. Let's just fucking get through this and never do this again. And like, what was the sentiment going back to a regular guard life?
Well, I'm still on active duty orders now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still kind of in this weird Title 10 world where I'm not assigned to recruiting, but I'm not a traditional M-Day guy.
Yeah.
But I would say this, I would rather go back to Afghanistan with no body armor and a toothpick as my primary weapon than to ever go back to recruiting.
Fair enough.
Like, hands down, I've heard drill sergeants really rough because of the hours and stuff. And I'll say that we don't do as much literal work as a drill sergeant does, but we deal with a lot of the same kind of stresses, especially on the guard side, because we have the recruit sustainment program where you have to deal with your recruits for. It's a weekend, but still, it's a traditional drill for them. They're in uniform. The attempt to train them, but there's so many rules and regulations in place on how you can talk to them, how you can interact with them. Because little known fact, you can quit before you go to basic training. A lot of people, they try to tell you not to tell the kids that, but it happens all the time. They get released from their contract because they just find a way out of it. So they mess up, and you're like, "Hey, drop and do 20," and they're like, "Nah, I quit." And you can't do anything at that point,
Yeah. The ultimate fucking cheat code before you even ship out.
Yep, 100%, man. And they'll have friends who have done it, so they'll come in and they'll get in long enough to get a couple paychecks and then bounce.
Oh, that's got to be a fucking kick in the dick.
It really is, because it comes off of your numbers. So your numbers are based on obviously the needs of the organization. So you get assigned a quota, a yearly quota, a monthly quota, a quarterly quota. If you don't meet that, congratulations, you're on a 6 or 7 day work week. If you're ahead of mission or like you're above your quota, congratulations, you're probably still on a 6 day work week, because if somebody else isn't making it, now you're tasked with trying to carry their weight too. And also, like, it comes down to you're always looking for that next person. You're always looking for that next honey pot. You're always looking for the next sweet spot to find somebody at. So, like, you're literally recruiting 24/7.
Yeah.
I would be out with my friends at Hooters and then just randomly like talk to this chick at Hooters, and then as soon as she says, "Whoa, I might join the army," it's like, crap, I can't flirt with you anymore. Now I've got to step into the professional realm.
I'm just imagining having because right now, in my mind, looking at the world we live in, I honestly, I don't see how recruiters are finding kids that want to serve. Like, to me, it feels like of all the generations, this current batch of kids growing up, like I don't see. But I mean, obviously, recruiters are finding them. They're finding recruiters. Like, what is it like? I mean, I guess you have to call it courting. Like, you're literally just trying to lure the next generation of service members. How weird is that? Like, what are the daily interactions like with these kids? Like, I feel like it's almost like talking to a complete alien. Like, I was just imagine like dealing with this brand new civilian named Skylar with a C, transgender, or worse, non-biased. Like, not, just the weird situation that's going on with people these days. Like, what are those interactions like?
So the best way that I ever found to kind of frame it is it's like dating, but it's like dating somebody that is completely not your type. So you have this entire base of knowledge on everything that the army has to offer and the guard has to offer, and then you have a dumb blonde who doesn't know anything about anything and is just going to laugh and giggle at whatever you say. And you have to be able to approach them, get them interested, and keep them interested. But at the same time, it's like dating in the fact that nobody wants their phone getting blown up. You have to break contact with them every now and then and kind of lure them back to you. And it's really hard in the aspect of this generation is entitled. So they think that they're owed something before they've ever earned anything. So you have to try to frame it as it's like something cool, or like the biggest thing was finding whatever their motivation is. If they want money, that's what you're going to preach to them. If they want to get out of the town, that's what you're going to preach to them. If they want to shoot shit and blow shit up, that's what you're going to preach to them. But all too often, it gets ruined by friends and family members, honestly, are the biggest deterrents to anything. Because all it takes is, these kids are really impressionable at that age. They don't know anything. They don't know politics. They don't know this. They don't know that. So you can have them in the office ready to sign the paper, and they get a text message from their friend, and it's like, you won't believe this. The president said A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I don't like that. And they're like, well, I'm not going to sign because my friend so-and-so doesn't like this. And it's like, well, your friend's not going to be in the army. You are. So, like, shut the fuck up and sign the papers. And it's really, really challenging. Yeah, and the worst is trying to recruit kids that have from military families, because they think they already know what's going on because they've seen mom and dad do it. But what they don't understand is mom and dad are probably like E6, E7, E8. They're not a fucking private. They didn't see their parents when they were privates, So when you try to explain, you're not going to make that much money. No, you're not going to be leading combat patrols in Afghanistan as an E1. And then they get really, really butthurt about that because their parents, they've seen from their parents, and their parents have told them about this great unicorn that is the military, and they come in with an even more sense of entitlement. I've had kids literally tell me that I needed to address them by their parents' rank, and I'm like, you can leave. If you could get out of the office, you're a civilian, you don't have rank.
Really?
I don't give a fuck if your dad is a first sergeant. Like, you can tell him I said that. I don't care. Tell him to come up here and talk to me because he's not in my organization, so I really don't give a fuck. Also, why I wasn't a successful recruit. But yeah, it was difficult, man, because you're dealing with so much entitlement and people that have their hands out but think that their hands should be full. So no matter what you do, it's for the organization, it's never good enough. You could recruit an entire division in 1 month, and they're going to want an entire corps. It's just no matter what it's never good enough, and it's hard. It's super hard on the mental aspect because that's when your internal yardstick comes into play. You have to know that you're doing the best that you can and that you're doing good work, because you're sure as fuck not going to be told. It's always going to be give us more, 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 and it gets really, really annoying. Really, really annoying.
Let me ask you this, and I really want to hit on this topic later on and talk about resources for help put some stuff out there for National Guard guys. But what sort of support do you have on a day-to-day basis if your cup runneth over, to sort of speak? If you're dealing with anxiety, dealing with the pressure, because I would imagine it's just as, or even more sometimes, with some of the more demanding fields. And I get it, no one's shooting at you, but to meet those quotas, that's got to be an insane amount of pressure. Are you guys referred or have any access to mental health?
So they'll try to tell you that, well, the chain of command in recruiting is toxic. They can get away with a lot more because it's USAREC or it's NVG or NGB. So they can write the rules as they go, so to speak. Um, my personal experience having mental health issues and depression and anxiety while being a recruiter was come into work at noon instead of 9, or take a knee, so to speak. But that knee, 24 hours. Like they expect you to be back at work doing whatever, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And like I was trying to deal with a divorce in the middle of recruiting. So I was getting pulled all these different places, and I would get told, like, hey, I have to drive down to Stewart, because I need to go handle some divorce stuff. And
Yeah.
they'd be like, oh, well, make sure you try to find somebody down there. Don't come back unless you get a lead. And it's
Oh
like,
my
bro, I'm
goodness.
going down there to deal with divorce, not to recruit. Oh, well, you're always recruiting, so aren't? Like, it's just, as much as they were preaching that they were there and that you could take a knee and that you had that support, you really didn't. Because when your boss texts you and says, hey, how you doing? It's not, how are you doing? It's not like, hey, are you okay? Do you really need help? It's, when are you coming back? When are you going to get me this number? When are you going to get me that number? And all it takes is like 1 or 2 of those phone calls, and now all of a sudden you get labeled weak and you can't handle the pressure, or you're not built for this and you're not built for that. And like the thing that really drove me nuts was I've been deployed twice. Like I'm no superhero. I got my fair share of firefights. I've lost friends, etc. But I really, really took offense when I got told like I couldn't handle pressure from people who have never stepped foot out of the country. Like it
Yeah.
really drove me nuts. It really, really did, because it's like, what do you guys know about pressure? Like, and it's in different arenas, true. But at
Mhm.
the same time, it's like you're trying to label me as weak and telling me I'm a bad NCO because I'm not going to in high school and handing out pencils and lanyards. Like mental health is no joke, and they don't really care about it. And I read a report not too long ago that said that there's a pretty good chunk of that 22, 23 a day that are purely coming from recruiting.
I would believe it 100%. Like I said, the reporting is out there. It doesn't take a lot to go on there and look how much stress and how much our recruiters are overworked, and nobody really brings this to light or pays attention to it, because at the end of the day, we were at war, and everybody will say and continuously put out the narrative, oh well, it's recruiting, you're not at war. Yeah, but you put somebody under so much pressure consistently over and over again, and you tell them that if you don't meet your quotas, you don't meet your numbers, you're going to be working 7 days a week, and you have them working ridiculous hour and never disconnect, they're going to crack. Guys and gals are going to fall by the wayside, and that's the truth from what I'm hearing from individuals such as yourself, because you're not the only person that's out there saying this, and yet nobody's, we're quick to change things if we hear about, privates or recruits getting mistreated at basic training. We're quick to jump on missions that call out improper care and taking care of our soldiers at the bases. But we got to start worrying about the entire force. And recruiters are some of the most abused and overworked people, but nobody seems to focus on that. To me, that's just, we got to take a look at that, especially the leadership out there.
Right. And it comes down to, it's even worse on the guard side, I can say, because they can literally fire you. You can
Yeah.
go from being like me, a E6, maxed on E6 pay because of your time in service, and you can be literally jobless the next day
Yeah.
just because they decided that, you weren't doing a good enough job. And that's like the most stress that I dealt with, is like, oh, well, I need to take a break from my mental health. But at the
Yeah.
same time, like I can't, because if they fire me, I'm not going to have a job. And then how do I pay my bills? How do I feed my dog? How do I feed me?
Yeah.
How do I make my financial decisions? Like And that was one of the craziest things, is because, like you said, you are 24/7, 365 engaged in something.
Yeah.
You'll be sound asleep, and then bam, your phone goes off, and now you're up trying to update paperwork for MIPS.
Mhm.
I've been on leave and gotten woken up at 0600 on leave and told, hey, you need to fix this paperwork. Like, and my experience may be different because I didn't have good leadership. Like, I point blank did not have a good NCOIC. I did not have a good 2IC. My first sergeant, my commander were inept at best, and they didn't want to work.
Yeah.
So they had access to do everything that I can. Instead of them just correcting the dotting the I and crossing the T or whatever, it was, oh, let's call Sergeant ADOS and wake him up. Let's do this, and it was like you could never get a break, even on 4-day weekends. Like, dude, I was responding to emails on Christmas Day.
Oh fuck.
Yeah, Christmas and Thanksgiving of last year, I was responding to emails, making phone calls, et cetera, because that's the expectation. Well, they're probably eating with their family around noon, but they're not doing anything but sitting on their phones from 3 to 5. So you're expected to make 25 to 50 phone calls in that time frame. I'm not going to answer the phone. And then, like, you log in the system, hey, they didn't answer the phone. We'll text them. We'll email them. We'll track them down on Facebook or Instagram and try to do that. And, like, I'm not a very pressure oriented person. That's not the kind of NCO I am. I never try to stay in my soldiers' faces with pressure 24/7. I outline the expectations. This is what I expect you to do. This is how you should conduct yourself, et cetera, et cetera. If you make it, great. If you fail, corrective action is going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit there and be like, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, because that's just not my style. And that's what they want in recruiting, is for you to literally harass these people. And they wonder why, like, nobody wants to join. Well, I mean, if somebody was blowing up my phone 15 times a day, I probably wouldn't want to deal with that person either. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I don't even deal with women like that. Women that text me 24/7 like that, I'm like, no, dude. Like, girl, you need to calm down. Like, I've got things to do. You know what I mean? If I don't respond, it's because I'm busy.
You've clearly never dated a Latino.
Not yet.
Yeah, that's crazy. I would have the same idea that if you are pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, it not only is it going to turn the prospective recruit away, but it might give you a bad name around that school, that community, which would fuck you.
Right, 100%. And that's everything is about community engagement. If you get disbanded from a school, like if you get banned from a school, congrats. You're not going to get anything. If you get told not to come back to a business, congrats. Because who wants to walk into a small business, a small local owned business, and try to recruit employees on the clock? That automatically are red flags. They're on the clock. Now you're putting their income and their job at risk just to try to sell them something. Like, it is so weird. And the people that I saw that were, quote, successful were because they had already been established in that area and grew up in that area. So they knew all the small business owners. They knew all these other people, or people were literally handing them recruits. Whereas if you're the new guy, like, it's borderline impossible to be successful because you're expected to operate at the same efficiency level as a recruiter who's been on the job for 12 years.
Yeah.
Like, and that in the Guard, it's career recruiters, man. Like, there's very, very few, especially now, very, very few recruiters that you're going to run into with a combat pass. Very, very few recruiters on the Guard side that you're going to run into with CAB, CIB, CMB. And that's due to the fact that they joined and their recruiter put them in recruiting as soon as they were eligible to move in. So as soon as they were an E4 with BLC, welcome to recruiting. So
Really?
you've got kids that 23, 24 years old, never deployed, never done anything in the field, don't know anything about leading soldiers or leadership in general, and you put them in a position to have to lead. And if they're successful, they make it up to E7, to E8. That's going to be your 2IC or NCOIC. And if they don't know how to lead soldiers and take care of soldiers, what good are they actually doing? You know, so it's this never-ending perpetual cycle of
That's crazy.
nonsense. Yeah, it really is, dude. I was astounded whenever I was meeting E7s, E8s with no combat patches, and I was like, "Where have you been for the past 20 years? What have you been doing?" Well, I've
Yeah.
been recruiting since 1995. Like, what? You mean to tell me you never went overseas? No, man, I was just in recruiting the whole time, and it's like I don't lose respect for it, but it's like, how can you sit here and tell these kids what it's like to be on deployment? Like, there were times where I'd have to get up and leave my office because there
Yeah.
would be another recruiter who's never been anywhere, not overseas at all, not for a training exercise or anything. And they'd be like, "Yeah, on deployment, you're going to do this, 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 and this," and I just have to get up and leave, dude, because I'd want to be like,
How
"Yeah,
the
it's
fuck would you
nothing like
know?
that." Yeah, right. And you can't do that. I literally got a counseling statement for doing exactly that. Like, you
Jeez.
can't do that to people. You're setting an unrealistic expectation, and you're playing with somebody's life. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's not like you're playing with a weekend. You're literally playing with somebody's life at that point. 6 years. That's more than most car loans. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then it's like jail time and other stuff. It's
Gosh.
ridiculous.
That to me, it just baffles me because you have no frame of reference for what the real organization is like. You have no idea. You can't speak on anything if all you know is you were just a recruiter. Like, and your only experience on whatever MOS you originally joined in as is up to E4. That seems crazy. Think about it. If you're an infantry kid, yeah, that's, you know, an E4, fuck, you can be a high speed fucking team leader.
Yep.
But for a lot of other MOSs, a lot of technical jobs, an E4, you don't know shit.
You really don't. Like, you don't know anything about your MOS other than AIT.
Yeah.
Especially in the infantry, most of your knowledge is going to come from being on the line. That's where
Yeah.
you're going to learn the TTPs and everything. Like, and it was so crazy to have people be like, "Yeah, this is how stuff works. Like, this is what it's like on drill weekend." It's like you you don't even know. You know what I mean? Because you're just a freaking regular guy. Like, you don't know. You haven't been to drill in 15 years.
Yeah. Fucking, that is so bizarre. I just, recruiting needs to maybe rework and relook at how it does its business.
Yeah, but they won't, man.
Yeah.
It's just it's so overrun with like good old boy system and freaking uh, nepotism. Like, people who are literally bringing in their family members, and you'll have like a father and a daughter on the same recruiting team. Father will be
No.
the NCOIC, daughter will be, put into the same company. It's like something that
Oh
would never
shit.
happen on active duty, but in the guard, it's a little bit different.
Now, if you would have said stepdaughter, I would have been thinking of the current themes and,
Right.
and
What are you
ideas.
doing, step bro?
This is a weird porno. We kind of jumped right into it, and we didn't get a chance to freaking ask you of your superhero origin story. Like, so tell me, um, yeah, let's go back and kind of do a beginning of this. Like, how did this journey start? Like, how did it come about that National Guard was the right place for you coming out? Because I assume it was right out of high school.
Yeah, I actually joined when I was in high school at 17.
Okay.
So I'd always been pretty, I don't know, interested in the military, so to speak.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, my grandfather was a medic in Korea. All his brothers fought in both Korea, Vietnam. Um, my cousin, actually, my first cousin deployed to Iraq um, with the First Marine Division,
Okay.
and he invaded with them. So he was gone for like a year and a half almost, and he came back and he, was talking about some of the stuff, and I was like, oh shit, like, I'm going to be a Marine. I was like 15 or 16 at the time. I was like, cool, I wouldn't
Yeah.
mind being a Marine. So me and him started running and getting in shape and stuff. And he was like, have you ever taken ASVAB? It was the ASVAB. He was like, this is a military test that you have to take, et cetera, et cetera. So one morning in school, I heard anybody who wants to take the ASVAB, you can take it and you can get out of class as soon as you're done. And I was like, huh, sounds like something for me, half a day at school. I'm all for it. So I went in there and everybody's in like dress uniform. There was a Marine Corps there. There's the Army, all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, whatever. Cool. So I took all the other stuff. And then when it came to the math portion, I suck at math. So I just Christmas treated. I was like, whatever. And I went to sleep and ended up, I Christmas treated, went to sleep. And then I woke up and it was like, cool, you can leave. And I was like, all right. So I started the enlistment process with the Marine Corps, and I had filled out some paperwork and all this other stuff, and I was going to contract as Marine infantry and all that. And I was sitting at home one day, and my dad's phone rang, and he was like, "Oh, hey, how you doing, buddy?" Et cetera, et cetera. And he comes to me, he's like, "Hey, somebody's on the phone for you." I was like, "Obviously not anybody I know, or they would call me." There was a National Guard recruit, and he was like, "Hey, man, you want to join the National Guard?" And I was like, "What the fuck is that?" Like, I literally had no idea what it was. Delta Farce had just came out. So I thought this was like a bunch of bumbling fat retards. And
Larry the Cable Guy's best movie.
Right. And then he sent me to the office and he was like, "Hey, come to the office." So I showed up at the armory and I was like, "What the fuck is this place?" And he had like talked to the supply guy and 240s and 249s and inverters out in his office, and I was like,
yeah,
cool, and he was like, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "I want to shoot shit and blow shit up." And he was like, "All right, so like Black Hawk Down stuff." And I was like, "Hell yeah, dude, I want to do Black Hawk Down stuff." And he was like, "Boy, do I have the job for you." So he showed me this little hype video or whatever, and
yeah,
I watched it and I was like, "Okay, cool." I was like, "But to be honest with you, I'm planning on joining the Marine Corps." And he was like, "Well, what are they offering?" I was like, "Going to be a Marine?" And he was like, "Well, what if I offered you $20,000?" I was like, "Oh shit, $20K?
Yes, sir.
Sign me up." Yeah, I was like, "Hell yeah, I'll take $20,000. I've never seen." So I went home, talked to my dad. My dad's like, "Is this sure what you want? This is what you want to do?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to go shoot shit, blow shit up, be in the army, etc." And he was like, "All right, cool, man. We'll send you to MIPS." So he signed the papers. They sent me to MIPS, and the first time I went down there, I failed the colorblind test.
Oh,
and they were like, "Well, so much you can't be infantry." And I was like, "Ha, okay, well, I'm not signing shit because if I can't be infantry, I'm not going to join." So they were like, "Oh, you can come back in like 2 months, 3 months, whatever." So my recruiter cussed me out basically the whole way back home. And I was like, "Yeah, it is what it is, but I'm not going to sign up to do something I don't want to do." So he sent me back down to MIPS, and they left me alone in the room with the test. And I quickly flipped through all the different things and memorized the numbers. And when they came back in there, I played it off like 72. That's right. And then the next one, I was like 69. They were like, "Yeah, that's right. Cool. Wow, your color vision changed." I was like, "Yeah, I ate some carrots or something." And they were like, "Cool." So I ended up contracting infantry. And I went to basic training between my junior and senior year, which is by far the worst thing that you could ever do. I left and got all indoctrinated and super motivated and all gung ho about the army, and came back and had to be a senior in high school for 9 months and lost all my discipline, lost all my military bearing and stuff. Just kind of, dude, I was telling my teachers like, "Hey, sorry, I have to leave class early. I'm getting deployed to Fallujah." And then I would literally just like get up and walk out of class, and they would believe me. They would be like, "Oh, he's in the army. Like, we've seen his military ID and stuff, so he must be actually leaving." And then I'd get a phone call from my dad, like, "Hey, did you tell freaking Miss So and So that you were leaving to go to Iraq today?" And I was like, "Yep." And he'd be like, "You can't do that." And I was like, "Yeah, I know, but I did." So, I barely passed my senior year, and
listen here, math lady. I got an important mission coming up. I gotta save the president.
yeah, dude, I didn't really abide by a lot of the rules because I thought I was above it at that point. I was like, "Look, I've already got the next 6 years of my life figured out," when most of my, classmates hadn't even applied to colleges. So I thought I was elite. in that aspect. And I went back to infantry school the following summer after I graduated. Literally 2 days after graduation, I'm shipped out to infantry school. Went and learned a little bit about being 11 Bravo, and got stationed at Fort Stewart. Put on active duty right at 2 years, and freaking didn't deploy. And that's kind of why I joined. I didn't want to kill people, so to speak, but I definitely wanted to go to, because that's the epitome of being a soldier, right? Like you go over there to do what you're supposed to do.
Friday Night Lights.
Right. So I was about to just be done with everything. I was transitioning back to the regular National Guard, and like, I don't know about all this. And then they were like, hey, we're going to Afghanistan. And I was like, what the fuck is that? Because the news.
Uh-oh. We lost our guest. Hopefully he comes back on. Oh, we lost you for a second. You there? You there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I've got you now. We lost you for a second.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. But the news at that time was only really covering Iraq. So all you heard was Fallujah, Baghdad, Sadr City. So I was like, what the fuck is Afghanistan? I did some research and was like, oh shit. Like that's real deal army shit over there. So I was
the
like,
real
all right.
hinterlands, the wilds.
Right. So I went from being mechanized and got put in scout platoon at HHC. So I was doing scout platoon shit, which was challenging in the aspect of rucking all the time. But really not what I signed up to do. And then I ended up going to a heavy weapons company, and I became a 240 gunner there. Fell in love with the 240. Deployed in April of 2009 to go to Afghanistan. Went over there, spent probably 2 or 3 months just doing conventional stuff. Presence patrols, snap TCPs, mentoring the Afghan police was our primary mission set. And then one day, our company commander got a call from a special forces unit. We're like, hey, we need a platoon of dudes to work the uplift mission. So my platoon got plucked. It went from here we are just riding around waiting to get shot to getting shot at on a pretty regular basis. Because first group they were getting after us from sleeping at nighttime to sleeping during the day, operating mostly at nighttime. Or two, but those guys were really solid. They were really professional about it. They literally like adopted us, so to speak. They would come over and we did rehearsals with them. We even did PT with them because their team sergeant was like, hey, if you are going to be out on mission with us, we need to know that you're going to be in shape and can do the stuff. So CrossFit was a big thing at the time. So we were lifting weights and doing CrossFit with those guys. And I learned so much just interacting with like the junior Bravo on the team, because he literally was like, hey, these are the things you can do to be a better 240 gunner. This is a better way to operate the 50 cal. This is a better way to work the Mark 19. And it was really, really nice that they actually took the time to kind of train us up and make us more lethal and more efficient, because we were nowhere near where we needed to be at the beginning of that to effectively help them. So by the time that they ripped out of country and we kind of went back to our conventional mindset, that man, we were by far the best platoon because we had been trained up by an ODA. We had been tasked with them. We didn't do anything sexy. We pulled security for them. We would set outer cordon, or we would walk on the flanks whenever they were making a movement on foot. Yeah. And it was a great experience. Like that's what I joined to do. Like that was the kind of stuff that I wanted to do. Um, Fast forward a little bit, I get home from deployment and I'm sitting around and I'm like, man, I'm in such good shape. I just need something to do, you know? So I told my wife at the time, was like, fuck all this. I'm going to go try out for SF. And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go try out for SF. So, I started doing some research and I found out there was a 20th group detachment that wasn't too far from me, and they were going to do a unit level selection, what they refer to as SFRE now.
Mhm.
And I went down there and we did PT tests, some land nav, and then just some general team events, ruck march, you know, shit like that. And I ended up passing. I honestly didn't think that I would. Like I kind of did, but the word selection kind of intimidated me because it tryout is one thing, selection is different. You know,
Yeah.
like there's training like ranger school. You can make it through fucking ranger school if you can just deal with being tired and being hungry. You know what I mean? Like, but when it came to selection, there was no feedback, you know, so you didn't know whether you had done right or you had done wrong. And that's where I first heard the term internal yardstick. And I had to learn to be confident in my own skills and literally put out 100% every time I did something. So that
Yeah.
way I wouldn't be laying in my rack for like the hour, 2 hours of sleep we would get and be like, oh man, did I do good enough? You know? Um, so they split us up. They were like, hey, you guys come over here, you guys file into the classroom. So I went into the classroom and they were like, hey, y'all have been selected. We're going to meet with you individually and let you know what your assignments are, et cetera, et cetera. They came up to me and they were like, you know, hey, Specialist ADOS, you know, you've been selected. The journey just begins, so don't pat yourself on the back. Selection never stops. That's the first time I've heard that term. Um, and I was like, wow, you know, this is cool. You know, I'm going to be training up to go to the queue. You know, I'm going to go to big boy selection at Bragg. You know, I'm going to get to jump out of planes. This is going to be awesome. So I'm already thinking like, man, I want to be an 18. I want to, you know, 20th group's AO is Latin America. So just got to learn Spanish. You know, that's not
Yeah.
um, and they were like, so we got a deployment coming up. And I was like, yes, dude, like maybe I'll end up on a B team or something. And they were like, but we want you to work in the 1 shop or the 3 shop as a support personnel. And then whenever you get back, we will put you in the training pipeline. And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, in no uncertain words, basically, I'm a shooter. That's not what I came here for. You know, I'm an
Critical
11
mistake.
Bravo. Right. Yeah. 100%, man. It's literally the biggest regret of my military career was not humbling myself and understanding that all I had to do was literally shut the fuck up. That's all I had to do was literally
Yeah.
just be quiet and be like, hey, I'm here to be an asset to the organization. Whatever you need me to do, I will do it. But instead, I was a cocky, you know, 21, 22-year-old specialist who thought that I was hot shit because I had some active duty time and
Yeah.
a CIB on my chest, and I had worked with first group. So I'm obviously more qualified than all these other nerds that were in my fucking training things. So I told them, you know, nah, I'm a shooter. I guess I'll just go back to the infantry. And they were like, yeah, you most certainly will. And, you know, to this day, one of the first sergeants in 20th group that just retired a couple years back, he's pretty close with my dad, works in the same geographic location for police work.
Mhm.
And I run into him every time I go back there. Like I'll call him and grab lunch or something. Every time he sees me, he's like, what's up, shooter? How you doing, shooter? And I'm like, come on,
Yeah.
man, you ever gonna let that go? But that was one of the biggest lessons, and hand in hand, the biggest regret I ever had was how to just be a silent professional. You know,
Yeah.
doesn't matter what you've done before; it matters what you do now and what you do moving forward. And it also taught me how to not beat my chest and not, you know, as a 21-year-old specialist, I thought that a CIB was put you at the right hand of God. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Because that's how you're trained, that's how you're taught, that's how you're bred. But at the same time, like I learned the lesson that that's no indicator of proficiency. That's no indicator of skill. That's no indicator of leadership. You know, like I know some fucking retards with CIBs. You know, I know some dudes I wouldn't trust with a fucking potato gun that are
Yeah.
rocking CIBs. So it was a really, really good lesson to learn. Unfortunately, I learned it the wrong way. But that's one of the. If I could go back and do it again, I would have just shut the fuck up and took my
Yeah.
slot in the S1 or S3 shop. Um,
Let me ask you this: would you go back now?
man, I'm too lazy for it now. I'll be 100% honest. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that I think that I have what it takes or anything because I don't know. You know, like SF knows what they want. Nobody else does. Um, but when it comes down to it, man, like I'm just literally too lazy. My heart wouldn't be in it. My mind wouldn't be in it.
Yeah.
I hate rucking so much now that it's like I couldn't even fathom going to fucking selection and walking around with the ruck on my back now. Like if there was some free pass that like John Basilone gave me that said I didn't have to go to selection and I could enter the queue. Even then, dude, I don't know if I could do it because it's the level of proficiency and the level of physical fitness that is found in the 18 series MOSs requires so much work, so much of your personal time, and so much of your heart that I'm man enough to admit that I don't have that in me to go do that as a fucking 33-year-old E6. Like I just don't. And I attribute a lot of that to my break-in service.
Yeah.
You know, I was very sheltered growing up. Never did anything bad. You know what I mean? Like I towed the line. The only trouble I got in was at school for cutting
Mhm.
up and being a class clown. But I got out for a few years and I discovered weed. And man, once I discovered weed, I just realized how much shit in life just isn't worth putting in the effort to me anymore. You know, like that was one of the biggest things whenever I came back into the service was okay, you know, we're done smoking, but we've got to kill off that laziness that came with it. Like you, and my biggest fear was, you know, I came in as basically the senior E4 in my entire brigade
Yeah.
when I came back. And I was the senior E4 for the longest. Like you couldn't find an E4 in my brigade, my battalion, or whatever that had more experience than me.
Yeah.
And that's not me being cocky. That's just based off deployment, time and grade, time and service, etc. And they promoted me to corporal pretty quick. Like I got lateral to corporal pretty quick and ended up getting a team pretty quick. And then I realized that the lives of my men were not worth lazy.
Yeah.
So I kicked it into high gear. You know, I got back in shape. I started pushing myself harder and farther than I really wanted to, but I never wanted to fail my soldiers. I never wanted to let my leadership down because I wasn't physically capable of accomplishing the mission that they gave me. So I got some pride about me, and I found that dog inside of me, and
You
I
found that
started getting
fire.
back after.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I got back after it, and I ended up deploying again in 2019, and it fucking boring as shit. Huge fucking waste of time, and came back and went back to my job, and that was it. And then the job ended up not working out when I came back, and I ended up in recruiting. You know, so
Yeah.
I don't hold the recruiting MOS. I was 11 Bravo from day one, always have been. Didn't transition to 79 Tango, just didn't. But dude, if I could go back to 21-year-old me, yes, 100%, I'd go back to selection. But 33-year-old me is like, that's way too much walking. I enjoy sleep too much. I don't want to have to put in all the academic work because people like to think like, hey, you're just dumb. You know what I mean? But SF guys are some of the smartest guys in the army because you have to have the capacity to learn languages, to learn different skills. Like an 18 Bravo is not just an 18 Bravo. You know, he's not just a machine gunner or a door kicker. He has to know how to be the backup Charlie. He has to know how to be the backup Echo. He has to know how to do all these things. So,
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize the amount of cross training we do, and they don't realize the amount of work that goes into preparing for not just a combat mission, but JSETs or CDITs.
Right.
SF is definitely not a dumb man's game. You will be ridiculed out of your team room if you are uh, the strong ranger mentality. You've got to be able to have some gray matter, especially for Charlie work and Delta work. Like you are not going to be a simpleton. Not the my I came in and I was a Bravo, and I love being a Bravo. Leaving and ending my time in service as an old warrant. So I'm happy the way I ended my career, but I definitely loved my years as a Bravo, playing with guns and being the tactical subject matter expert. Definitely had its fun and appeal. The older you get, the more injuries you start racking up, the harder it gets. The harder it fucking gets to do the job. So I understand exactly. But I will say this, some of the older guys that I have seen come into SF as older dudes and the mental and physical preparation, like my hat always went off to them because these were some hungry motherfuckers. I remember I had a teammate that came in, he was already 37, and I was just like, fuck, man. Like, and I was a young 20 something kid, and looking at the amount of work he put in to maintain his physical ability, because now I'm 37 and looking at what he did and seeing what I have to do to stay mobile and stay agile and stay moving after injuries and surgeries is like, Jesus fucking Christ, I got to work harder than I had to when I was a fucking 20 something kid. I could eat whatever the fuck I wanted. Now it's like half a scoop of rice, 1 cup of chicken, 2 cups of broccoli. And it's like, all right, there's my lunch. And for dessert, I'll breathe.
Right. And like I noticed like I always used to ask people like, "Hey man, when did you start noticing that change in your body?" And they were like, "Oh, 25 to 27." And I was like, "Oh, whatever. That's not going to happen to me. Father time, whatever. Fuck him.
Oh, yeah.
I'll out survive him." My first drill back whenever I came back in was like a 4.5, maybe 5 mile ruck to the range on a tank trail down at Stewart. So it's sand basically.
Yeah.
And then it was just BRM for like 2 or 3 days. And dude, I didn't know I snored until after that, whenever we finally set the patrol base and got to go to sleep. And I literally knocked out like instantaneously.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'll wake up the next day, everything fine. Bro, I woke up and had pain in areas I didn't know existed on my body. I was like, what the fuck? So yeah, when it comes down to it, man, like these older cats that end up going to SF, or even the ones that I enlisted like a 32-year-old, and just the amount of effort that he was having to put into getting basic training ready. Hats off, like mad respect, because you have to work twice as hard as that 18-year-old, because your body is working against you at that point. So you have to eat clean. You have to train properly, because you're not going to recover at the rate that an 18-year-old is.
Yeah. And real quick, before you run out of time, for our National Guard guys out there and gals listening, what are some tips? What are some things you can put out for anybody that is dealing with mental health or dealing with that question of, I'm stressed the fuck out. Where do I go for help? Where do I go for resources? Because active duty guys, they know they can just go down to the mental health clinic. They know they can just go to the P3 clinic and get the help they need. But National Guard, you're only covered while you're on your status, correct?
Right. You're only covered when you're on a drill or on Title 32 or Title 10 orders. So other than that, you're working off of your civilian health. I will say this, your career is not worth your life. So if you ever get to the point where you're in that hole and you're having those dark thoughts, do whatever you need to do to save your own life. If that's having to pay a doctor's bill at the ER, do that, because trust me, you would much rather be in debt for a year or two than to end your own life. And I've been there. Luckily I was on active duty at the time, but I've been in that hole. I've been in that situation. On the Guard side, your best route even though it's a terrible thing, is the VA. Because the VA, as long as you are a service member and have served, they will treat you. Um, there are things that they've established in the past couple years called vet center. If you've deployed and you have a DD-214 saying, hey, that you've been to combat, you can go there and you can get free counseling services. Military One Source is also really, really good. They don't preach that a whole lot on the guard side, but you can literally call Military One Source. You can Google the number and you say, hey, this is me, this is what I'm dealing with, and they will point you in the direction of how to go about getting that help. That's what I did. I had a chaplain who referred me to Military One Source. I called them, I answered a few questions, and they actually made the appointments for me. Said, hey, this is when you need to show up. This is what you need to bring with you. You have a CAT card. Nothing says you can't go to your closest military base. Go to your closest military base and go to the emergency room and tell them that you need help. And just say, hey, I'm in a really, really dark place. And they are still going to treat you. They are still going to take care of you. Yes, you may end up having to pay a medical bill, but again, it's not worth your life. Mental health is something that you're not weak for reaching out. You're not weak for making a decision to get help. If anything, you're that much stronger, because it takes a lot of courage to say, hey, something is going wrong with me and I need help. I would much rather anybody call me at 2:00 in the morning, wake me up and say, hey, I'm going through some stuff. It's heavy and I need help. I would rather listen to you vent and try to help you out than to attend your funeral and listen to your obituary and all that.
And that's one of the greatest things about this meme community too. A lot of people don't realize when you're at your last chance, last resort, people read those messages. I know you've dealt with that recently, right?
Yeah. I usually post about once a month saying, if you're at the end of your ropes, send me a message. I read every DM that I get. I don't care if I've got 100. I don't care if I've got 2. I read each and every one of them and I respond. I take time to respond, unless it's something stupid that doesn't warrant a response. If you can send me something stupid, probably not going to respond. But if you hit me up and you say, hey, I'm having problems, I need some help, I'm going to do whatever I can at that time, right then and right there, to get you help. If that's putting you in contact with a chaplain, if that's getting you the resources for Military One Source, if that, whatever it takes, I would much rather take the time to do that than to hear that I lost another brother or sister to suicide. Another thing is, like, most guard states do have a civilian behavioral health side to them that will work with you and will help. You just have to ask. They don't really tell you about it, so to speak, but they do exist, and they do have specific counselors and specific doctors that are there purely for MDay, ADOS, and National Guard Title 10 soldiers to use. So, use your chain of command if you have to. If not, contact a chaplain. If not, whatever you have to do. If it's Military One Source, if it's going to your closest military base, whatever it is, just go and get that help. You're not weak. I've been in that situation. I don't look at myself as weak. I don't regret it. Did it have some negative consequences on my career? Yeah, in a way it did. But I would much rather be here sharing this message than to be 6 feet deep. And that's literally what it comes down to, is you've got to put yourself in front when it comes to mental health. The mission, the soldiers, all the other stuff, like, yeah, that's all fun and games, but you're not effective if you're not all there mentally. You have to be at your best mentally in order to serve your soldiers and to serve your chain of command and your country better. So never hesitate to get help. Never hesitate to reach out. Call everybody if you have to. Wake your first sergeant up. Wake your platoon sergeant up. Whoever. Call your medic. But get that help, because right now we're losing way more people than we ever should. One is too many. And just because the global war on terrorism is ended doesn't mean that the war in your heart and the war in your head is going to. It's a long, long fight. But as long as you put left foot, right foot, and you work proactively towards getting that help, you can win that fight. There's tons of success stories out there. tons of people who have said, you know what, I'm going to fight this back. So continue to take the fight to the enemy. The enemy is mental health. Then fight it. Fight it with everything you have, and you'll come out on the other side as long as you're willing to put left foot in front of right foot. But if you're ever hopeless, if you're ever feeling like the gun is the option or suicide is an option, it's not. It's not. It's the wrong answer. Like, it's a permanent solution to what most times is a temporary problem. And you never know if the person you call is going to be the one that saves your life. But never hesitate to reach out, even if it's a meme page, even if it's on Discord. Do whatever it takes to get that help, because the resources are there. They're there, and they're in place for a reason. You just have to know how to find them. And just because you don't know how to doesn't mean that the next person doesn't.
Yeah, it's you're not alone. You always have somebody to lean on and to confide in, even if at the end of the day you tune into a podcast or read a meme and it strikes a chord with you. Like I said, I'm a survivor. I've gone through the worst of the worst, and now I'm back on track, onto a better path. And ultimately, leaders, if you're listening, you need help too. I ultimately could not function and be a good enough leader without stopping and taking the time to take care of myself. And once I did that, I realized, fuck, man, I love my life. I have an amazing life. I've got amazing brothers like Greg and Paul that are there for me, and I don't want to let them down. And I'm gonna be here doing this, and I'm glad we have a meme community out there for the military that's putting some good stuff out there. So without any further ado, I would like to end our show with the ritual of fuck one, marry one, kill one.
Oh, no.
Military leader edition. And since it's just you and I today, I'll make it easy for you. Right. So the first one I'm going to throw out there. Let's see. He's currently a general. General Milley.
Oh, no. What are my other options?
That's your first one. Let's go with a former Secretary of Defense. That was always my number one gal. The one, the only, Hillary Clinton.
Oh, shit.
But don't worry. Don't worry. We got one more. We'll keep this one classy. Maybe we'll branch out of the military. We'll think of a timeless classic Hollywood vixen. Let's go with Carrie Fisher. Carrie Fisher's cold dead body.
All right, so I'm gonna say I would fuck Hillary Clinton, right?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Just because if you marry her and something goes wrong, you might get Jeffrey Epstein. Kill General Milley.
Oh man.
Just utterly fucking useless at this point. So just go ahead and get that over with real quick.
Send that real quick.
Yeah, the world will be a better place. And I guess that means I have to marry Carrie Fisher's dead body, which is fine because she can't give me any shit. So
that's exactly my pick, right down the line. Unbelievable. We are.
Dude, I was scared you were going to be like Command Master Sergeant of the Air Force Bass or something. I was going to be like, dude, I would have picked her for Mary, because if somebody's going to tell the waitress that I didn't get 7 chicken tenders when I ordered 7, it's going to be her.
It's going to be her. But the thing is, she she's actually an avid fan of the podcast, and she would get me pulled off. And since my only paying corporate sponsors are the Taliban right now, I have to tiptoe around my sponsors real quick. My dogs are going crazy. They want their food. I can't thank you enough for joining us today, man. I hope we can have you on the future. As always, Security Halt is for the boys, of the boys. I would like to thank my co-hosts, Greg and Paul and Eric now. Yeah, we have a new member of the crew for helping me on these endeavors. To all the sponsors, thank you. And to everybody buying my used socks and Poshmark, stop trying to fight me for the amount of money. It's the only way I can pay for these damn podcasts. Feet Boy 999. So just buy the goods.
Just buy it already.
With that, we are out.